Hi there, I'm Elaine Cochran with Papa TV in Port Angeles, Washington, and welcome to our new series On the Road, where we'll be exploring unique locations across the North Olympic Peninsula. Today, we have ventured out to the new Dungeness Light Station at the end of the Dungeness Spit, which is one of the world's longest natural sand spits. The spit and the lighthouse are both a part of the 775-acre Dungeness National Wildlife Refuge. So we invite you to join us as we explore the oldest functioning lighthouse on the Strait of Juan to Fuca, along with the new Dungeness Light Station Association. Stick around to find out how you can spend a week as a lighthouse keeper, maintaining the property and conducting tours, as well as enjoying the serenity, wildlife, and natural beauty of the Dungeness Spit and Refuge, all of which are just a short trip from Sequim, Washington on the North Olympic Peninsula. Walter Scott wrote, "Far in the bosom of the deep, o'er these wild shelves my watch I keep." This could have been the lightkeeper's motto. Lighthouses conjure images of high towers beaming light across an angry sea. We often imagine the keepers of the light to be alone and isolated, almost hermit-like, braving brutal storms and long days of torrential rain, wind, snow, and pounding surf, all the while keeping the light shining in the darkness. However romantic and adventuresome, this image has faded into the past with the advent of electronics like GPS, radar, and two-way radio.
Well, lighthouses in general are not obsolete. They're just less important than they used to be. It's very true that radar and GPS are primary means of navigation, but specifically with recreational boaters, lighthouses are still very important. Every time I've convinced myself that lighthouses are not important to commercial traffic, I'll run into a harbor pilot, or I'll run into a captain that deals with the huge ships out in the Strait, and they tell me that they are still very important. They're a secondary aid to navigation, but they are still very important.
Lighthouses on both coasts have fallen prey to disrepair, neglect, and even vandalism.
In other locations around the United States, when the Coast Guard personnel left, vandalism occurred. This small group of local people decided that they wanted to prevent that from happening. So they coordinated with the Coast Guard, and they started the new Dungeness Light Station Association.
The new Dungeness Light Station Association, an independent, nonprofit organization, assumed responsibility for the lighthouse in late 1994 under a license with the U.S. Coast Guard. The light station is continuously staffed 24 hours a day by association members who serve on a weekly basis as volunteer keepers at their own expense. These volunteers reside right here in the restored 1904 Keeper's House. The lighthouse is operated, maintained, and improved effectively through membership dues, keeper's fees, and individual contributions at no cost to taxpayers.
To be a keeper out at the new Dungeness Lighthouse, first you need to be a member of the association. Once you become a member, then you can sign up for any available week out at the lighthouse. As a keeper, you stay out at the lighthouse for 1 week at a time. Sometimes it's 7 days, sometimes it's 6 days, depending on the tide cycle. And when you're out there for the week, you end up doing some basic maintenance tasks at the station.
We mow the lawn once a week and clean the bathrooms, man the lighthouse so that when visitors come, there's somebody to greet them. Personally, I've been the person who's removed virtually all the dandelions from the lawn. That's a major achievement.
The museum and the tower is open from 9 to 5 each day, and so we open it up and get prepared for anybody who might want to come in and get a tour of the lighthouse and go up to the top and take a look around.
As you travel through the many rooms of the lighthouse, you can discover several historical artifacts that tell the history of this unique place. And the keepers can be a wealth of knowledge while you explore the Lighthouse Museum.
The other part is the keeper's house and just keeping that tidy as well. I think historically, the keepers were expected to keep it in pristine condition and were inspected every now and then. So I think that tradition has continued, but it is a lovely spot and it's always nice to come into a nice clean household.
You stay in the keeper's quarters, which was built in 1903 and 1904. And it has 3 bedrooms that we normally rent out. There's also an extra bedroom in the basement for children or non-married adults, or it's basically an extra room for people to stay in. It's got a really nice layout, has 2 full bathrooms, has a laundry facility downstairs, fully stocked kitchen, fully stocked with all of the tools that you need for your week. You bring your own food and your own clothing, but you can utilize the laundry facilities in the basement or anything in the kitchen.
Well, the keeper's quarters are very well maintained. Obviously, there are people who care about this, not just in terms of kind of keeping the furniture up to date and stuff, but actually decorating, it in a style that reminds you of kind of the early years of the 20th century. It's so comfortable, and it has Wi-Fi, so you can keep up with your electronics, and your TV and a DVD and a pool table downstairs, and great, the kitchen's well stocked. So it's really an easy place to come and just make yourself at home.
When we release a new year's worth of reservations, surprisingly enough, people tend to reserve the wintertime weeks before the summertime weeks. People enjoy being out at the lighthouse in the winter to watch the storms and watch the waves. One of the interesting things that people tell me is that during the wintertime storms, when you get the big rolling waves crashing on the beach, you can feel it shake the house. In the summertime, you have generally nice weather and you do get a good sunrise and a sunset almost every day. So in the wintertime, one of the unique things that happens near sunset is even if it's a cloudy day, even if it's been overcast or drizzling all day and you haven't seen the sun at all, at the horizon, there's quite frequently a little window, about 5 minutes before sunset, the sun will peak below the clouds and it will light the undersides of the clouds, and the whole sky will glow in orange and purple and red and yellow just for 5 or 6 minutes a day. It's amazing. So the transportation out to the lighthouse is somewhat unique because it's all based on the tides. Some weeks going out to the lighthouse is at 5 p.m. on a Friday. Other times it's at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning. We try to have it either a Friday or a Saturday, but again, it's all based on when the low tides are. So after you sign up as a keeper and it's your time to go out to the lighthouse, you show up at the transfer station over in Carlsberg and you load all of your supplies into the back of our 4-wheel drive trucks, all your food, all your clothing, anything else you might have brought with you. And at that point, we drive you out to the lighthouse in the 4-wheel drive vehicles. We have to be very diligent with the maintenance of those vehicles because when we're driving on the beach, it's not only salt and sand and rocks, but we get logs that come up and hit the side of the vehicle. So every time we're done with a transfer, we return to the transfer station where our office is. We have to rinse off the trucks because we have to remove all that salt that's up underneath the vehicle. And it just presents an interesting maintenance problem because that salt wants to eat that vehicle apart from day one.
The Dungeness Spit, one of the world's longest sand spits, shelters a bay rich in marine life. President Woodrow Wilson established the Dungeness National Wildlife Refuge in January of 1915 as a refuge, preserve, and breeding ground for native birds. Today, the graceful arch of the Dungeness Spit continues to protect nutrient-rich tide flats for migrating shorebirds in the spring and fall, quiet bays with calm waters for wintering waterfowl, isolated beaches for harbor seals and their pups, and abundant eelgrass beds for young salmon and steelhead nurseries. From the silty depths of the mudflats to the dizzying heights of the Douglas firs, the habitats of Dungeness are a fertile mosaic for wildlife.
This tour, it's been the coyote. So we watched this very well-fed, bushy coyote flipping something up into the air and then come closer to the house and closer to the house. And I was shooting pictures as fast as I could. And he got all the way out to the front of the house, just near the fence, and cool as a cucumber, didn't care that we sat on the porch and took his picture.
For years, we would see a coyote or two slink up the spit, you know, to our area here and then kind of disappear. Now the coyotes must have a lair pretty nearby because they come out every evening, or at least we've seen one big, sleek coyote come right out and be right outside the window. You may have seen it and photographed it, but we watched it hunting.
Yes, Bonnie, we saw it too. And it looked like it was headed back home with some lunch. Without the miles of bluff stretching back towards Port Angeles, there would be no Dungeness Spit. Dungeness National Wildlife Refuge is perhaps best known for its expansive sand spit, or barrier beach. This low sand, gravel, and cobble beach is reinforced by a driftwood spine. The constant source of sediment from the bluffs continually changes the nature of the beach.
When we drive down onto the beach, we never quite know what the condition of the beach is going to be. It changes day to day, and it's not really summer or winter. It has to do with storms and the current. So one day we can drive out to the lighthouse and the beach can look like a superhighway, flat as a pancake all the way out. Other times it will have moguls that are 2 and 3 feet tall that are full of rocks the size of bocce balls and beat the heck out of the bottom of our trucks. So it changes day to day, and it's really interesting to see how the spit really is a dynamic piece of land. It changes constantly.
The Dungeness National Wildlife Refuge is open to the public year-round. Hiking, wildlife viewing, and photography are popular activities on the refuge. It's a half-a-mile trip from the parking lot to the base of the spit, with another 5 miles to the lighthouse. That's an 11-mile round trip. It's important for hikers to start out and return on the hard sand of the beach during a low tide, as a high tide will push travelers up onto the soft sand, and the many logs along the spine will slow a hiker down, creating a more strenuous hiking situation for the inexperienced and unprepared. To access the National Wildlife Refuge, you travel through Clallam County Park's Dungeness Recreation Area. But let Ranger John Graham share more about this special place.
Welcome to the Dungeness Recreation Area. Back in 1952, the State Department actually purchased this land, about 1,200 acres in total, to construct the world's then largest antenna, to broadcast the sound of democracy across the Pacific Ocean into the Iron Curtain. So they employed about 60 men, heavy machinery and equipment, bulldozers, gouged out the land, made tons of flat surfaces for their equipment, for their buildings, for the antenna array. All this was going smoothly until about a year and 3 months later when the State Department decided to stop construction. All that remains is the Voice of America Road, which is here today. The flat areas were converted into meadows of grasslands. So that's the only remnants that you can see from that era. And as you come into the park, you're going to encounter those meadow areas. Now it's beautiful grasslands, which are for birding. We're very popular for birds of prey. As you drive further into the park, you'll see the bluff on your left, which overlooks the Strait of Juan to Fuca, which is another one of our unique ecosystems. Also here at the park, we've got about 2 miles of trails. You can walk and bicycle all of them. Horses are allowed on half of the trails. And what I said before about the meadows, you're going to experience that ecosystem. The trails go through the wooded forest area and then again out to the bluff. So in a short walk, you get to see all 3 of those ecosystems, so it's quite pleasant. We've got 66 campsites. We also have a group camp area that can hold 35 people comfortably. Our campgrounds are very unique. They've got dense vegetation, A lot of salal, nice tall hedges. You can enjoy the privacy with your family and enjoy the special moments with the campfire and the marshmallows. They're really quite nice. People don't realize there's two parks here. At the very end of the Voice of America Road is the Federal Wildlife Refuge. People often come and they camp at our park and then they walk the Spit the next day, whether it's a family or a scout group or people that bus in just for the day. Once you get down to the beach, which is a half a mile walk from the parking lot, most people go to the right, which is out to the sand spit, to the lighthouse. A lot of people don't know about the secret, as I call it, going left instead, walking in front of the park bluffs, because there's about 3 miles of public beach here. And if you really want some solitude and nature and just you and the waves, often that's the way to go. Another great thing about this campground is where we're located. We're just 10 minutes from Sequim, 15 or 20 from Port Angeles. So we're really used as a base camp for many people. They don't want to stay in a hotel. They want to stay out here in nature and have their campfire and that experience. So during the day, they're going to go to things like the Olympic Game Farm, just literally 10 minutes from the park. You can drive through, you can feed the bears that come super close to your vehicle. They'll even wave if you wave back. Another thing to do here is the second weekend of May, we've got the state's longest running festival, the Irrigation Festival. And they celebrate the water, the irrigation that they tapped into in the Dungeness back when this was farmland. So that's really got quite a history here. Another thing people like to do is come in July for the Lavender Festival. They'll camp at night and during the day. They'll do the farm tour. They'll get lavender gifts, plants, even ice cream. Along with catching a ferry to go to Victoria, you can also catch a whale watching boat out of Port Angeles. I've done a couple myself, seen whales every time. It's a nice half-a-day trip to come back to the campground and have that camping experience again. It's really quite a day. So come out and visit us here at the campground. If you want to make a reservation, you can go to the website and make a reservation for up to half of our campsites. Again, the other half are first come, first serve. Come out, have a campfire, bring the kids, make some memories, and have a good time.
Thank you, Ranger Graham. We'll definitely be back very soon. We are here in the museum at the Lighthouse in front of the 4th Order Fresnel lens from the Cape Flattery Light Station. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Cape Flattery Light Station. While exploring the west coast of North America in 1778, Captain James Cook visited the northwestern tip of the Olympic Peninsula. He called it Cape Flattery because he was flattered that he believed he had found an important harbor or passage, otherwise known as the Strait of Juan de Fuca. About a decade later, John Mears, who was one of the first to confirm the existence of the strait, encountered the chief of the Makah tribe. The chief's name was Tatoosh, a surly and forbidding man by Mears' account. Mears named the island Tatoosh after the Makah's fierce leader. Later, in 1849, William MacArthur was commissioned to survey potential lighthouse sites along the west coast. His report stated, "A lighthouse is much needed also at Cape Flattery, and I would recommend that it be situated on Tatoosh Island, a small island almost touching the northwest extremity of Cape Flattery." Congress accepted his recommendation and allocated $39,000 to build a lighthouse on Tatoosh Island, in addition to another lighthouse on the new Dungeness Spit in 1854. Tatoosh Island was a traditional fishing camp for the Makah. They camped there throughout the summer fishing and whaling season, and they continued to use the island as such even after the lighthouse was built. The Cape Flattery Lighthouse was first illuminated on December 28, 1857, just 2 weeks after the new Dungeness light was put into use. This makes it the second oldest lighthouse on the Strait of Juan de Fuca, just behind the new Dungeness Lighthouse. In June of 1932, the light was replaced with the 4th Order Fresnel lens that lit the night skies. The lighthouse was then automated by the Coast Guard and lost its last year-round island inhabitants in 1977. In 1996, the 4th Order lens was replaced by a modern beacon. This lens is now on display in the museum room of the Dungeness Lighthouse.
So in the 1920s, the Lighthouse Service was aware of cracks that had developed in the lighthouse tower. The lighthouse tower at that time was around 100 feet tall, and the upper portion of the tower is where the cracks were located. There's a lot of speculation on where those cracks originated from. The most likely is a few earthquakes that we had in the area around the 1920s probably made existing cracks slightly larger. And when they saw that those cracks were large enough to be a structural issue, they decided they wanted to lower the tower. Today it's roughly 67 feet tall, give or take. Had a small group of guys out there and they took it down brick by brick. Interestingly enough, halfway between the lighthouse building and the barn, there is a small lump in the grass. Well, not so small lump in the grass. And underneath the grass is all of the brick from the tower when they shortened it. They simply put a little bit of topsoil over top of the bricks and grew grass, and they're all still there.
Right now, I'm standing on the foundation of what was the old foghorn for the lighthouse. Back in the late fall of 1914, keeper Edward Brooks walked around the lighthouse. The dismal sound of the old foghorn pierced his ears, and the sound of ships' whistles could be heard as they felt their way along the strait. 2 weeks of fog with no let-up, Brooks thought to himself. Hardly had the thought crossed his mind when the fog began to lift. For a moment, he stood there motionless, unable to believe his eyes, and then he ran toward the beach. There, directly in the path of the station fog signal, was the passenger ship Sioux, high and dry on the sand. The passengers disembarked and remained as guests of the lighthouse for 6 days until strong tugboats finally got the Sioux off the sands, aided by high tides. Even with the light and fog bells and horns, the Spit has quite a history of shipwrecks. The Spit will continue to see the occasional small boat wash up on its sandy shores for the foreseeable future, even with the lighthouse on it.
So the Serenity sign, which is out on the beach near the lighthouse, it's got two signs on it, one that points toward the lighthouse and one that points toward the base of the Spit. The one that points toward the base of the Spit says reality. The one that points toward the lighthouse says serenity.
I was thinking about why the lighthouse is such a special place, and part of it is that sign at the entrance which says serenity. About the first 24 hours, I'm on mainland time. And after that, a kind of peacefulness just settles in, and I'm on serenity time, lighthouse time. It's just so lovely. And I don't know how it happens, but it seems to happen for more than just me.
But I do notice that the minute we get out of the vehicles and get our stuff out and up, unloaded into the house, it's just like this sense of peacefulness settles on you, and you just change your pace because it's going to be a different kind of experience.
But out here,
It's
the
so
quiet is just absolutely amazing.
Great for sleeping.
If you're looking for a really beautiful place that's quiet and where you can just relax and get away from everything, this is a good place to come.
When we pull up to the lighthouse, when we arrive to pick up the keepers to take them back to their cars, so many times the keepers will come up to me. The first thing they'll say is they want to stay. They want us to just keep going, keep driving, go back to town, and leave them at the lighthouse for another week. Our organization is responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep of the lighthouse, except for the beacon at the top of the tower. The actual rotating beacon at the top of the tower is the responsibility of the U.S. Coast Guard, and they come out and maintain that about once a year. They change light bulbs and clean it and make sure that it's in good repair. Quite a few people, I would say 70% of the people that stay out at the lighthouse have stayed there at least once before. And there are some people that have stayed there many, many times, 8, 9, 10, 11 different times, 11 different years that they've stayed out there.
How many times have I been out here? I've been out here 5 times, and our crew has been out 6 times. I only missed 1.
This is my 6th time coming out to the Spit to be a lighthouse keeper. And so I really pretty much know what to expect now.
This is our 6th time, I think we figured out. We started in 2006 and have come just about every other year.
And when you stay out there multiple times, you feel ownership. And we really try to promote that because it's the volunteers that really help us maintain that station. One of the reasons I really do love lighthouses is because of their unique location. They were built in dangerous locations. They were built in locations where ships needed to be aware of a danger to navigation. They're dramatic and they're beautiful, and I enjoy taking care of them. I enjoy helping people take care of lighthouses. One of my favorite things about the lighthouse is that I feel like it's our lighthouse. That light station is maintained by all of our members. Yes, I'm involved, but my board is involved, and my regular volunteers are involved, and the keepers are involved. It's maintained, it exists because people are passionate about helping to maintain that lighthouse.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you've enjoyed your time at the Lighthouse and learning a little bit more about the new Dungeness Light Station Association. I'm sure after all that, you're pretty excited to sign up to help keep the light. And to do so, you can go to www.newdungenesslighthouse.com. Join us next time on the Road. We'll see you then. Bye.